Since the age of 9, he has explored meditation, biofeedback, and human potential, building his own path to lifelong mastery. He's trained Navy SEALs, coached elite performers, and even serves as a licensed marriage and family therapist. His career spans national security, psychology, policymaking, and health optimization, blending tactical strategies into real human development. Please welcome the Spartan of human resilience, Michael Ostrolenk.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for
My
having me on the
pleasure.
show. And I love the introduction.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I try to put what I feel into that introduction, and
Nice.
this is what I felt, and I wanted to make sure the audience felt that.
That's cool.
I wanted to start off with a question for you. What
Yeah.
does resilience mean to you?
So I am actually attempting to redefine resilience. So let me give kind of an original understanding of resilience that a lot of people that I spend time with think about resilience. I'm very fortunate. I spend a lot of time with people in the American special operations community, very elite folks.
Right.
And for a lot of people in that space, and not just in the special operations community, but other elite performers, resilience is a capacity. Like, for instance, you fall down 7 times, you get up 8. You just keep
Right.
getting up. There's no retreat, no surrender. No matter what happens to you, you keep getting up and fighting because there's a mission to accomplish. And you adapt along the way, and you'll learn, hopefully. So your system becomes stronger and stronger each and every time.
All right.
Using Nassim Taleb's idea, it becomes anti-fragile over time. And I do like that. So when I do work with clients, I definitely work with them on optimizing the physical human system, which is really important, mental toughness, emotional resiliency, things along those lines. But let me kind of give you that and yes and another way I consider, in addition to those kind of things, is, and I work with both men and women, but I'm just going to stick with men. We talked this offline. I also co-lead a
Mm.
men's group, and you're asking about that. And I'd say there's kind of 3 ways of thinking about resilience in that context. And I'll stick with men, but this is all human beings. Men seem to, many, I can't speak to all men, I haven't spoken to all men, but seem to distract themselves quite easily from their own inner experience. Like
Yeah.
they're uncomfortable having what, there's certain feelings they're uncomfortable feeling. There's certain thoughts they're uncomfortable having. There's certain sensations and energetics in the physical body they're uncomfortable experiencing. So they seek distraction. And now's a great time to be alive if you're seeking distraction. Easy access to social media, Instagram or YouTube or whatever your thing is. Porn, Pornhub, 24 hours porn if you
Yeah.
want it online. Drugs are easily available. Alcohol is easily available. Some people work extra periods of time, so they don't want to feel things, so they go to the office or home office and work long periods of time. Some people go to the gym, and nothing wrong with going to the gym, but they go to the gym to escape their own life and their own experience. For me, in the work with men, but also with women too, resilience is the capacity to sit with your own self for longer and longer periods of time. Sit in that uncomfortable feelings or thoughts or sensations. Because the longer you're capable of doing that, there's wisdom. There's a message or messages in that discomfort, in those feelings and those thoughts, that if you keep distracting yourself from it, you're not gonna hear it. And it's gonna get louder and louder and louder. And usually it comes out one of 2 ways. It comes out as passive aggressive behavior, or it comes out maybe in the long run as a chronic illness. So the idea is like, no, let's develop the inner capacity to sit with and process our thoughts, feelings, and emotions and sensations, and discover what's underneath that our body, really, our mind and body, is trying to tell us. It's a message system. Listen to it. There's wisdom there. Even though
Right.
we don't want to hear the message, there's wisdom there. It's telling you about some inner states. It might be telling you about a relationship you're in, or relationships. It might be telling you about a situation you find yourselves in, or whatever,
Yeah.
multiple different things it could be. But
Right.
resilience in that one case is that. And I have 2 other definitions of resilience, but I'll just stop there to see if you have any questions.
So, to reiterate, resilience in very simple terms is being able to sit with that discomfort you have inside and be able to acknowledge what's going on and process it without needing to distract yourself.
Exactly. And I want to be clear. It doesn't necessarily mean to express what's going on inside oneself. However, that could be part of it if it's done in a healthy way, because maybe that's what also needs to take place, is to feel, allow it fully, and learn to healthily express it if that proves useful to the ends that you're seeking.
Fun, fun. Why is it that men feel the need to distract themselves?
Well, I would say it's humans, but since I brought up the
Okay,
men, we'll stick with the men. But
okay.
I do work with a lot of women too who also seek distractions. But men, and I can't speak for every culture, and I can't speak historically, but I can speak for the Americans that I've worked with, and I've been fortunate to work with some folks across the globe, men in particular, and we seem to be taught, and I believe this is a kind of a wrong interpretation of the Stoic philosophy, to be stoic, meaning, and it's interpreted this way: don't feel your feelings. A real man doesn't feel his feelings. He's strong. He's powerful. He represses his feelings, and he does what he's supposed to do. That can be some of the message that men receive. Another part of the message that men can receive, which leads them to do something very similar, is they're not really taught how to feel and process and healthily express their feelings. So even if they come from a culture or a family where it's okay, there's no one telling them, "I'll give you something to cry about," or "Only I can be old, only I can be angry," or like "There's nothing to be happy about in this life. Life is hard, and you should be." Those are messages you receive. But even if you don't receive those messages, but you're not shown, because your parents are models to you, if you have parents or a single parent or an uncle and aunt or whomever, of how you actually feel, process, and express emotion. So even if you're free to do that, because you're not contracted and constricted by your family of origin, if you're not given the models on how to, then you don't know how to.
Yeah,
And that could also be a problem too.
got it. It's, I definitely am aware that for a long time there was this message of men don't feel emotions, men don't feel pain, and men don't react to pain. This definition kept being propagated. I'll come back to this question, but something that's on my mind is how do you take a generation of men, especially, I think with the newer generation, it's a bit easier because they haven't been given this definition. But with the older generation, they have been drilled with this definition for years. How do you undo that? We can tackle that now or later, as you wish.
Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate the question. So, background real quickly. My graduate degree, my postgraduate studies was in somatic psychology, the California Institute for Clinical Studies. That's body psychology. And for my graduate degree, it was transpersonal psychology, which is spiritual psychology. And then I had to learn all the other schools of psychology for testing purposes and licensure in the state of California, object relations, self psychology, family systems, all the stuff. But let me just highlight the somatic approach. I work very from a very embodied perspective with clients, and I find out that is one of the best ways to help them bypass, and I'll explain how this works, the cultural conditioning against feeling. And what I mean by that, I'll give you an example. So, if you're my client, AJ, and you said to me, I'm really angry. Okay. Like conceptually, I believe I understand what you mean by anger. You hopefully know what you mean by anger. But I might say to you, that's a nice concept, but how do you know you're angry? Because that's just a mental construct. And a lot of at the very beginning, clients are like, what do you mean? I'm angry. Okay, that's cool. But like, how do you experience anger? Like, for instance, in your body, like, how might you notice something happen in your body that you might call an angry reaction or response? You might say something like, oh, well, I notice when I get angry, my throat gets tight. My shoulders get a little bit tight. Okay. I notice my heart beats a little bit faster. Okay. I notice maybe I hold my breath a little bit. There's a little bit of contraction here. Okay. Whatever. Everyone's unique, but like you start sharing with me like somatically how you feel in the body a particular emotion: sadness, grief, joy, bliss, whatever the thing is. We bypass the conceptual mind, getting to the physical body. And the more one can do that, the more one frees up from the constraints of the culture that's conceptual, because they're actually just feeling whatever's happening inside their body. And while you're doing that too, you start becoming aware of how your body organizes itself against feeling certain things in some cases. From Wilhelm Reich, he's one of the founders of kind of the whole field of body psychology. We have armor. So as little kids, we have a real perceived threat from a parent, let's just say a father figure, a mother figure, or whomever was raising us. They're bigger than us, and they say something, and we get scared, and we're like 5 or 6. We don't have the cognitive capacity to go, can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah.
And like have an intellectual conversation with your parent about like, why are they saying that way? What do you mean by those words? You get scared, and for many children, you tighten up. The muscles and the fascia get tight. You hold your breath. When you tighten here, for instance, the fascia and the muscles get tight and you hold your breath, that is a protective mechanism against feeling. Because when you do this, you feel less, which is a great thing for a 5-year-old who feels threatened, real perceived. It's perceptual. It might not be a real threat, but they feel it's a threat, and they do this thing so that they don't feel as fully as they would if they're completely open. So I might be working with a client, and they might notice a few things like the tightness in the jaw, tightness in the throat, a little bit of tightness here. And I will work with them over time to help them open this space up, the fascia and the muscle, so they can breathe more fully. And then they start, and you got to do this slow, and you got to do this mindfully, but when they start breathing more fully, they start feeling more fully. And emotions that they never wanted to feel in the first place, okay, start arising more freely. And it's preconceptual. Like, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to put concepts around it. You have to tell a story. And we do because we're human beings, but you start feeling these things. And as the feelings emerge, you might have imagery, you might have sounds, you might hear voices. And I don't mean voices like schizophrenic voices, but like things going on inside your own head, energetics of the body, things just might start emerging. And for instance, I'm making this up because everyone's unique, and I don't know anyone particular one's history, but you might relive or remember an event in your early childhood where you first learned how to do the thing, like the contraction, So I help people get out of their cultural constructs by getting out of their concepts, by getting into the body, and eventually feeling more fully. And then you can rewrite the story. You can tell a different story if you want.
So fascinating. I have so many questions for you.
Cool.
When I was preparing for this podcast, I was like, I'm not gonna be able to ask all my questions in 1.5 hours, and I'm pretty sure we may need one more podcast. But
Nice.
Here's an online question I found, and I feel it'll align with what you worked with for so long really well. So here's the question. The title goes, I sacrificed everything for my independent and strong husband, but now I discovered it was all a lie. That's the title. Here's what this person says. I fell in love with my husband, 5 years together, 1 year marriage, when I first met him. He has multiple sclerosis and was pretending he didn't have anything. He was still 27 and me 25 and had figured everything out. A house, a car, an engineering job. We built our future on dreams of progress and love and care. The house was paid for initially by his parents. Same goes for the car. He was pretending to be normal and not managing his symptoms till he got worse. He has zero charm, zero personality, zero thoughts, zero goals, zero resilience. His friends treat him like garbage, leaving him behind because he can't walk and he just cries about it. Every time I try to get my life in order and follow my dreams, he just crushes them. He just crushes them down so that I can cater for him and stay with him because I have no option. I left my country, my job, my savings for a better life, and this is what he gave me. He wants me to give him children and love him, and I have never been a hypocrite. I lost my mental health because of him. Now with Crohn and gastritis and liver damage, went to a mental hospital because of suicidal thoughts and cannot move from bed. I have nowhere to go, nothing to do, and absolutely no mental or physical health. I have to stay with him. and pretend to love him in front of his family, but it would make me sicker. The family also expects kids, and I really don't want to. What advice would you give this person?
Well, wow. You know, you shared a lot, and I'd actually like to say I'd like to have a longer conversation with her because there's
Absolutely.
a lot of details that I'd be
Yeah.
curious about. So it's hard for me to make, some universal statement like, you should do this. However, I
Yeah.
would say two things, generally speaking. And it can't necessarily be specific to her because, like I said, I need more information. But I heard a lot of victim language in there. All these things are happening to her. She has no agency. She has no sovereignty. She's just at effect of other people, or her husband in this particular case. And I can understand. I understand why people would do that. And it's a very disempowering position because you can't get out of that if you're always perpetually a victim of the circumstance or the person. If I was in conversation with her as a client, I would not lead with that because most people will not be able to hear that they're a victim as a mentality because they believe they are a victim. And it's a reality. Like, oh, how can you say that's in my head? I am a victim because of these things this person did. And I don't want to deny anything that the other person is doing to the person
Yeah.
psychologically, emotionally, mentally. But at some deep level down the road, she will have to, if she doesn't have to, it'd be benefit her to realize she's telling a victim story. And if she keeps telling the story, she's going to continue to be the victim and keep herself locked in. Like I said, I wouldn't start there because most people aren't going to hear that. They're not going to be willing to accept that they're actually playing a victim role and a victim mentality. What I would do is utilize that victim energy by perhaps, and like I said, I need to know more, but using that victim energy, getting her angry. She's already angry, I would imagine. Getting her to feel the anger, and that actually might have a positive benefit on her Crohn's and other such physical ailments. So that's a nice positive outcome, possibly. I don't know for sure. But actually, to use that anger to initiate action to better her life, even small things over time. Even if she can't get out of the marriage and move back to where she came from and re-engage her old career immediately, like, let's get angry, let's feel the anger, and let's use it to motivate you to do even the smallest things to begin to take care of yourself, if you can. I mean, if she's completely incapacitated, that's a different conversation. But like, what empowering things could she do? And I would say other physiological things she can do. Can she eat healthier? I don't know what her food consumption is. She eats healthier, she might feel better, and she might help these things. Although I would imagine it's mostly stress related, not necessarily food related.
Yeah.
But you can still have a sensitivity to food due to your stress response to
Right.
whatever the situation is. How is she sleeping? Is she physically training, doing any exercise or movement practices? How is she dealing with her stress? Let's empower at least even little bits in those places so at least physically she feels a little bit better, maybe has a little bit more energy. If she has a little bit more energy, a little bit more vitality, more clarity or cognitive capacity. Then we can start working on the psychological things, like what small things psychologically could she do 1% better every day to improve her life, but she needs the energy to do that. So maybe, the first things are like the physiological things. And then, like I said, we start addressing some of the psychological things, like what can she do even for 10 minutes a day to get something in her life that she enjoys, to bring a smile to her face, for something that she can be grateful for, even the
Right.
smallest things. Find a new friend, find a hobby. Maybe she can't go and spend hours and hours and hours and hours doing it, understand, but maybe she can do a little bit of time, something she really enjoys doing. So she has gratitude. Gratitude opens the heart, makes you feel better, which then gives you energy to start making better decisions. And then slowly over time, I'd work on her thinking. Like, it's a whether it's right or wrong, we do this. It's right or wrong. It's true or false. Like, this is the thing. This is happening. This is a story. I'm sticking to it. It's my story. I am the victim of this thing. Okay, hey, it's your story. Cool. I would start working with her on how she thinks, probably about the smaller things, and help her start seeing any kind of negative framework she utilizes in thinking about and analyzing situations. What's the conversation she has in her own head? What's the tone
Right.
and the volume and the word she uses? What's the word she uses when she engages in conversation with other people? Those are small things, but they're huge things, because if you can start managing your mind a little bit and taking some of the negativity away and kind of, and I'm not saying you should be positive all the time. Everything's light and unicorns, because it's not. Life can be really hard. But if you're negative all the time, or majority of the time, self-talk or talk with other people, you're supporting, um, both cognitively and neurologically in your nervous system, that same story.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be able to get out of that story unless God blesses you with an aha moment. You're like, holy shit, I am making a story up and I am empowered. But most people aren't going
Yeah.
to get there. You're going to do
Yeah.
little small steps. And the small steps literally could be, once you fix your physiology, is like, let's just work on these small little pieces, maybe not the big thing with your husband, but these other things over here, and how you think, to talk and engage other people, and make them a little bit more positive. So you start empowering yourself through your mind. So
I
like I
heard
said, like I would need so much more, and I want to talk to her for
I
hours.
completely understand. I mean, this is
Yeah,
not enough information,
yeah.
but it's always a great way for me to get perspective of what the guest observes, what their expertise is telling them to focus on. I heard something that really intrigued me, which
What's that?
you said as soon as she feels the anger, that anger will give her energy to go do things that could be more empowering. Does that mean a lot of times people who feel stuck, who are not getting to where they want to go, are blocked by actually not feeling what they need to feel? Because until they feel everything, they may not be able to move forward.
And I don't want to make a universal blanket statement, but my experience in doing this for 30 years is a lot of people who are dealing with depression, like really low energy, are in fact repressing anger. Like, if they actually dealt with the issues that they're not facing and dealing with, felt, process, and experienced more deeply the anger, their energy would start arising in their system. And I'm not saying it's a cure-all for all depressions. Like, everyone's unique and different. There's multiple different factors involved. But I think, if for some, in this case, maybe perhaps this woman, I don't know her, but like, it could increase the energy in the system to allow her or him, whoever the person is, to start taking action. And not having that energy might be because we're repressing certain feelings, or areas of life we don't want to deal with because we're uncomfortable. It takes a
Yeah.
lot of energy to crush energy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or repress energy, I should say.
Does how somebody grew up play an important role in how resilient they become?
It's not it's not final, meaning you have choices, but, or I should say, and yes, we, on many multiple different levels, like, we learn from our parents. We see what they do and we model ourselves after them. Or in some cases, you model yourself opposite of what you see your parents do.
Yeah.
But even if you model yourself after them, or model yourself against what they do, so because you want to do something different, you're still not free, because you're either completely modeling yourself after them. So as an adult, you just do what you learn to do. So there's no freedom there. You're reactive. It's a program built into your system. Or if you're like, I'm anti-authoritarian, I'm a black sheep, I'm going to do opposite of what my family or my parents, my mom did, whatever. You're still reacting to them. They still have like some degree of power over you. Put that aside for a second. You learn your resilience by seeing what your parents do and how they treat you over time, meaning how they help you deal with life challenges. If they solve all your problems, they don't give you the opportunity to solve your own problems. I don't mean like you're 5 and they send you out in the streets and say, figure it out, son or daughter. But like, it's stage or an age appropriate, but you want to give the children an opportunity to get hurt. I don't mean like fall off a building and break bones, but
Yeah.
like hurt themselves and fumble around and try new things and get frustrated and try to, you love them and support them, but don't like fix everything for them, because they're not going to become resilient. So there's
Right.
psychological resilience that's modeled both what they see in their parents and how their parents treat them. And there's physiological resilience. What do your parents feed you? Are they feeding you like here in the United States, the standard American diet, which is like, if you don't like, 30 years ago, I was like, I'm going to create a website that says wehatechildren.com. It's like, that's a horrible website. Yes. And I'm going to put what we do. No commentary. Like, this is how we treat our children. This is how we feed them. Because if you actually looked at how we feed our children, we must not like them. Like, because we're setting them up for diabetes and heart disease and
Yeah.
cancer and obesity. Like, and I can go down the row of like and I don't want to like make people feel bad. Sometimes I do, but like, it's our cultural phenomenon, like the way we feed our kids and the way we don't have them exercise. And I shouldn't even say exercise, play. Like
Yeah.
they don't have to go to the gym when they're 7 years old and they're going to the gym, lift weights, but like outdoors and playing, riding bikes and running around in the woods or whatever kids used to do, at least when I was a kid, as opposed to, just playing video games all day.
Yeah.
This doesn't make you resilient. If this is all you do all day, going out and playing in the woods or shooting hoops or riding your bicycle or skateboard or playing physically, that can make you more resilient. Eating healthy foods can make you more resilient. Learning how to live within the 24-hour day-night cycle will make you more resilient. If all you do is on your computers all night long and like you're disrupting your melatonin production and you're up all night long and you sleep all day long, and unless you have a shift job, because some people actually have to do this for a living, you're actually going to cause problems to your physical system over the long haul. So like,
Yeah.
if your kids aren't eating well, they're not moving, they're not living within a 24-hour day-night cycle because all it's artificial stuff. You're pumping them full of drugs, and maybe the drugs might be appropriate for a child at a particular time, but like I think we over-medicate our kids. So yes, to answer your question, how you are raised will definitely have an effect on how resilient you are, but doesn't limit you because you can still do other things to enhance your resilience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In your experience, when you started working with people and they start trying to rewire how they are, how they feel, what's the roadblock they usually hit? They're like, okay, I've made up my mind. Can it start changing how I behave? What's the first few roadblocks they hit? And how quickly can they shift that? On average, of course, it
Yeah, yeah,
can't
yeah,
be.
yeah. No,
It's case
that's a
by
great
case.
question. No, I love that question. So, I have a friend, Dennis Stoika, and he has a great concept out of the Japanese martial arts called Kaizen, 1% better every day. And that's what I always think about. Like, if you just do a little bit every day, you improve yourself a little bit. You don't have to do the fire hose and do everything. Now, personally, I like the fire hose, like, oh, let's do it all. But, that doesn't work for everyone. So some of the challenges I see with people who come to work with me or that I've worked with over the years is, and my clients probably find this annoying because I say this all the time, from abstract to concrete. They need to go from abstract to concrete. You're like, what's that mean? Well, in this particular case, if someone comes to me and they say, I just want to be healthier, or I want to be more loving, I want to be more present with my spouse, I want to be more fit, whatever the concept is. I'm like, that sounds nice. I don't know what the fuck you mean. Sorry. I don't know.
That's
Sorry.
that's totally okay.
Okay. I don't know if you're allowed to
Absolutely.
cuss on your show. Like, I don't know what the
That,
fuck you mean by that. Like, what do you mean concretely? You want to be healthier. You want to be more loving. You want to be more fit. You got to concretize those into very specific behaviors or things that can be measured. Because then it's just not just kind of amorphous. Like,
otherwise,
ooh, I
it's
want
too
to be more
vague.
fit.
Yeah,
It's vague, too
it's
vague.
too vague. It's too vague. And
Yeah.
in my experience with coaching, I've found this to be so true that when people don't have clarity of what it is they need to do or what's going on, they tend to just stay stuck where they are because they genuinely don't know where they want to go. They think they have this idea, but it's too vague. So they don't feel like I have a path to move forward. How do I do this? And that's where they tend to get stuck.
I 100% agree, and what I would say is both. So it's like abstract to concrete. Let's be very concrete. What do you mean by those things? And I use a first person, second person, and third person approach. And I'll share this with you because it might be of interest to you to help answer the question for you. So like for the first person, what's your perception of who you are, who you want to be? Very concrete. So, for instance, I have a future self visualization. I have all my new clients do. It's anchored in the body, but like, okay, give me a picture of who you are in 6 months, how you feel, how you look, how you think, how you show up for yourself and other people. Get as concrete as possible, not abstract. Oh, I'm more loving. Okay, that's nice, but what do you mean? Like, and then we work backwards. Okay, this is your vision, embodied vision. Cool. But it's not just a vision, it's also how you feel and how you think and your posture, your muscle tone, and all this stuff. And then we work backwards and create a plan, a very concrete plan of action to get us to that vision so it's embodied in 6 months or 9 months or a year, whatever it is. And so this is a second thing that I find. Okay, people become more concrete, like, okay, this is the goal. I want to go from 25% body fat to 15% body fat. You know, I want to be able to have a conversation with my wife where I don't get defended. I'm able to sit calm, cool. I feel my feelings. I openly express them. I can hear her concepts and ideas and feelings. I can actually listen and reflect back to what I'm hearing. And they can give me some really concrete steps of what they're doing to increase their intimacy with their partner, their wife or husband. That's awesome. But okay, great. What's the plan of action, and how do you implement the plan as a daily practices? Your disciplines, practices, tools, technologies you got to do on a daily basis or weekly basis. So show me your calendar if you use a calendar. Tell me what you're doing every day to make sure the vision becomes an embodied reality you're working towards. Because not only if you go from abstract to concrete, great. Now you're really clear, and we create a plan. But if you don't implement the plan, it's kind of useless.
Yeah.
So that's where second and third person comes in. So first person, like, okay, I perceive how I think, how I feel, but I can be self-delusional.
Yeah.
Like you and I could be talking, and you could say, "Mike, I've been working on my planning to be more loving." I'm like, "Great, tell me more about it." And you're like, "Oh, I am. I'm so much more loving, empathetic, caring, compassionate." I'm like, "Cool." I don't know if you're deluding yourself, but that's how you see yourself in that very moment. Cool. That's why we bring in second and third persons. Second person is a second party in your life who's important, a spouse, a best friend, whomever, who spends enough time with you, who can call you out on your bullshit. So if you say to me, yeah, I've been working on being more present with my wife, meaning I'm not on my phone, I have good eye contact, I'm actively listening, repeating back what I hear her say, paraphrasing, all that stuff, and then I talk to your wife and she's like, he's on his phone all the time, his back is to me, he barely listens, he doesn't reflect back what he's hearing me say. I'm like, oh, now she could be delusional too. Meaning she could have a bad day and just be pissed at you and go, I'm going to give him an F even though he deserves an A. So, hold both lightly. Your perception of yourself, someone else's perception of you, but it gives you valuable insight over time.
Yeah.
And then third person, some objective measurement. So like I can do a DEXA scan and see my body fat ratio. Cool. I can do heart math and I can see that I'm actually living in coherence with my brain and my heart. So I'm living more openly and lovingly. It can be measured. Awesome. Or whatever measurement you do, there's psychological tests you can take. This is my level of emotional intelligence. 6 months later, it's boom, awesome. You're doing better. Like you're showing improvements. So first person, how I think, feel, my worldviews, my perspectives. Second person, how someone else perceives me and my behaviors. And then third person is an objective thing we can measure over time. All three together is a great way to make sure you're not, you're actually doing the thing and making it occur and creating the kind of person you want to be.
That's awesome.
Cool.
You have had such a wide experience in your career. You've been therapist, you've been in national policy, you've done so many different things. I'm just curious what drew you to so many different things. I know there was probably an underlying commonality, but what drew you to such a wide variety? I was so curious.
So actually, that is a perfect word, curiosity. There are two things I'm going to have on my grave, at least. One is that makes no sense. And the second is yes and, right? That makes no sense. I've been saying it since I was 5 because I'd look at human beings and I'd be like, what you're doing makes no sense. Like it's silly or dumb, or as a kid, I'm probably say that's so dumb. I probably wouldn't say that as an adult, but I'm like, that makes no sense. Like you're doing this, but you're trying to accomplish this, and this is not going to get you there. That makes no sense. So that kind of led me to be really curious about why people do what they do, and then come up with alternative models and maps. Like, oh, maybe if you try it as an experiment this way, not this way because this isn't working for you, this way you might get your goal. You might get that girl or guy you really want to be with. You might get the job. You might be healthier and happier, whatever the thing is for you. So that makes no sense. That makes no sense. And then yes, and I'd find a model on the map. I'm like, oh my God, that is so cool. Like this, a psychological model or geopolitical model or some cultural model or, the physical model, like Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, Tibetan medicine, shamanic medicine. We all have models. I'm like, that is so cool. That answers some questions. It gives us a different perspective. And then I would always say, but it's limited. As expansive as it might be, as holistic as they think they are, they're still missing some things. So let me learn another model and another model, and I kind of put these things together. I'm an integrationist. Like, ooh, how do we create bigger and bigger models to better understand the world we live in, while realizing they're only models. They're not real. They're just models.
Yeah.
They're concepts of the world. They're stories we tell ourselves. Okay, so that's kind of okay. That's kind of the philosophical framework that has led me in my whole life. But you're asking, how did you get into all these different things? Okay, and I'll just tell two quick stories on the. I'm trained as a therapist, and I've been doing that for 30 years, coaching for 25. But in terms of the national security policy or national policy, I got in. I was transitioning from California to DC Metro after graduate school to be closer to family, and I was living in the state of Maryland, and the state of Maryland was going to recognize my license to practice as a therapist. They just passed some laws. But after 18 months, they hadn't written the regulations. So I was waiting so I could get licensed, so I can practice. And I started coaching, but I still wanted to be a licensed therapist. And I was fortunate to meet Ken Wilber. I don't know if you Ken Wilber, his work. He's an integral theorist. He's written probably 20 books. Really, really cool philosophy that tries to integrate and understand the vast array of human knowledge systems and how they work together and fit together. And he invited me to be a member of his think tank, the Integral Institute. So I got to go out to Colorado a good bit, meet with him, meet with a lot of the other members of the Institute. And this is the same time I was transitioning to East Coast and trying to get my license working and stuff like that. And I met a woman, Betsy Lehrfeld, and her partner, Jim Turner, who ended up becoming a mentor of mine, brilliant guy. He passed away, unfortunately, a couple of years ago. He was doing public policy in the health space. He was a health freedom advocate ever since 1968. Like, he's been fighting the battle to make sure consumers have access to dietary supplements, organic foods, Chinese medicine. He helped get the needles legalized in the States. They're actually illegal to use because they're puncturing the skin until the 90s. So like, he was involved in all kinds of really cool health freedom type issues. And he's like, well, while you're transitioning, why don't you just do some work for me? Cool. Okay.
Wow.
And my background was in health. Like, I spent time at the Health Medicine Forum working with Dr. Len Saputo, helping him create an integrated medical program of sorts. So I was very familiar with integrated medicine and alternative medicine, and I had some great people that I work with in the California area. But okay, I'm like, sure, Jim, I'll do that. So I started doing some policy work while waiting for my license to be transferred over, and I started coaching as well. And this is where like the curiosity comes into place. So I get a phone call. Jim gets a phone call, but I happen to answer it. A lady named Sue Blevins from the Institute for Health Freedom, I think it is. It's 25 years ago, so hopefully it's the Institute for Health Freedom. And she's like, what do you know about HIPAA? Nothing. Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. You sign the forms every time you go to the doctor here in the United States. Nothing. She goes, well, they say it's a privacy rule, but it's really a disclosure rule. What do you mean? Let's have lunch. So the three of us got together. It was a Tuesday. I think it was a Tuesday. And she's like, she explained to us, like, all the people can have access to your healthcare records without your permission because of the rule. Wow, that sucks. And she's like, let's do something about it. I said, I'll put together a coalition. So by Friday, I put together a coalition of 40 groups, liberal, libertarian, progressive, and conservative groups that were going to fight for in America, Americans' rights to health privacy. We protect our medical records from third-party interference. Cool. And here's where the curiosity starts taking place. Around a little bit around that same time, the Patriot Act, which is an act here passed in the United States, which gives the government broad powers, in my opinion, violating your Fourth Amendment protections to access all types of records, three provisions were sunsetted and they're coming back up for a vote. One of the provisions, I think was it 215 or 505? I think it's 215. There's some medical connections there. So I'm like, oh, I'll start playing in that space as well, because there's medical connections and I'm doing this health freedom stuff. From there, I ended up going, wait, there's a lot of really cool groups left and right, the liberal, libertarian, progressives, and conservatives that are doing stuff on civil liberties. I've already created this medical privacy group. Why don't I help create a permanent left-right group on privacy? So I looked around and I did. It's called the Liberty Coalition with some friends of mine, Brad and Plummer, James Plummer. So we created a Liberty Coalition. It was like 70 groups all across the political spectrum working to protect your civil liberties, Fourth Amendment protections. And here's where the curiosity also came into place. So I started thinking, why are our civil liberties at threat? I said, well, because of our foreign policy. Those people over there, they're a threat. So we need to derail our civil liberties here to protect us at home against them. That's kind of the argument at the time. Global war on terror, post 9/11. I'm like, I need to understand this foreign policy stuff. So I spent 6 months studying foreign policy. I read everyone from left to right, up and down, all the thought leaders. And I'm like, I'm going to work in that space. And this is endemic of how I do things. So I studied it, and then I found someone to hire me to start doing foreign policy. So I did foreign policy for a couple of years. And I'm going, why is our foreign policy, in my perspective, suck? Well, because the American citizens are uneducated about anything outside the United States. Most people don't know the difference between Iran and Iraq. They have no idea what's going on in the Middle East or Europe and, Asia, the whole world. There's a lack of information, and most of it that they have is really poor, like really bad information. So I'm like, okay, I want to understand education. Like, why is our education system so, non-clinical word, shitty? So I spent 6 months studying education, philosophy, from all the different theorists, and where our education system generated from. Came out of Prussia, 1905, I think it was. Why it was created, originally created to create sheep, really, but that's not a great word. People for the factory system. You want an elite, liberal elite who ran the country, the owners, and you wanted people who were factory workers. And in order to be a good factory worker, you have to follow the bell. You have to be able to do the same thing over and over again. So our schools were actually organized like eventual life in the factory. 50 minutes, you ring the bell, you go to the next thing. 50 minutes, you go to the next thing. You sit in rows, you have the authority figure up front. It's a perfect system to create people who are docile in the factory world. Understand it? Yeah. Cool, I understood that. So I studied education. I'm like, I got people to hire me to do education policy. So my curiosity of trying to understand why we do what we do, that makes no sense, led me to study certain fields. I'd study the certain fields, and then I'd get hired to work in that field. And that was one field that I can keep going. Like, why do we do this? Why do we do this? Why do we do this? And so I did 20 years of that. Learning new fields. I studied the material. I get hired to do it. And the funniest thing, like, I was, right before I retired, I was on a panel with a former guy from Naval Intelligence, a former SEAL, former guy from the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, and maybe from the CIA, and me. And we're talking about the future of counterterrorism. And I remember walking, and this is on Capitol Hill in Congress, and I remember walking into the room going, why the fuck am I here? Like, I am so not qualified for almost everything I've done for the last 20 years. I get curious, I study it, I learn all about it, I learn who the key players are, and I get hired. But I don't have a graduate degree in that particular field. or I haven't worked for the agency, I haven't, special operations, any of those things, but I still get invited for some weird reason to give talks and lectures and engage people in conferences and stuff like that. And like, this is kind of really weird. I'm seriously unqualified, except for
Yeah.
my curiosity. My curiosity would drive me to learn things, and I even became a personal protection specialist and a PI out of curiosity, which I can get into that story, but we don't have to. But okay,
Yeah.
that's kind of answer your question about like, how did you get into these things? I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
Really fascinating. And I think a lesson for everyone is don't restrict yourself. Don't ever restrict yourself, because if your curiosity calls to something, just go explore. You don't know where the path is going to lead you.
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
Why marriage and family therapy? Like, that was one of your first things that you touched upon. What led you there?
Yeah. So okay, I was actually in the middle of an MBA program at West Virginia Wesleyan College, and let me step back. So you know, we know a little bit about when I was a child and all the stuff I was interested in, and gotten the help to biofeedback and meditation. That was always a private interest. Like I literally, I remember like 2 years ago, I found an digital audio of a book on Bushido, meditation book on Bushido. I used to listen to on audio tape, if people remember what
Yeah.
an audio tape is, for every night for years when I was a kid. And I found it digitally, like, oh my God, this is so cool. It brings back great memories. So I'd meditate and listen to it over and over and over and over and over again. That was always a private interest. Publicly, I was going to go get an MBA. So I was in the middle of an MBA program. And a friend of mine was murdered. I know since
I'm so sorry.
elementary school, kindergarten, which caused me like a dark night of the soul. Like, what am I doing? Life is so short. Oh my God. I don't really like the MBA program. I love all this other stuff. And then a month later, a teacher committed suicide, which kind of added to it. And I sat and I thought, like, I was doing fine. Like, I had good grades. I was on a career trajectory, but I'm like, this is not interesting to me. The only thing in the MBA program that interested me was psychology of human management. But even that wasn't hugely interesting, just the psychology piece. So, like, I'm really just interested in psychology, like why we do what we do, and optimizing the human system and self-management, self-mastery. You know, uh, I was very interested in the martial arts, so kind of had that perspective. I'd studied yoga, Zen Buddhism as a kid. So those kind of things. How do you play with the energies of the body and nature, and what's the nature of the mind and things like that. That's what always was of interest to me. So I'm like, I'm gonna go do that. Like that's my calling. That's all I've always been interested in, just privately. And I looked at a couple schools, JFK, John F. Kennedy University, and the California Institute for Integral Studies. And CIS at the time was building a program called East-West Psychology as a PhD program. So you study Eastern psychology and Western psychology, which would be really cool. And then you also, you do your master's as part of the PhD program, and you become a licensed therapist. And I was like, I'm going to do that program because it has everything I'd ever want to, Buddhist psychology and yogic psychology and shamanic visioning and, the Western schools of psychology is like has everything. But the program wasn't concretized yet. And I'm like, I actually need to go out there and start school. So JFK was also a great option. And they had a program in transpersonal psychology. I'm like, well, I'll go study that, and then I can always do postgraduate work or PhD work after that. JFK's program led you towards licensure as a psychotherapist, but it's specific to marriage and family therapy. So, it was just like the track at JFK that drew my attention was the transpersonal nature of it. And it happened to be for marriage and family therapy. Like,
Got it.
I wasn't necessarily consciously going, "Ooh, I want to work with families." Because at the time, like, because I used to take my friends, I used to do hypnosis for them when I was a kid, guided imagery. I'd do all kinds of really crazy shit with my friends, but it was always one on one. And so I always thought I'd work with one on one or small groups of people. I never really thought myself working with families, and ultimately I never did. I mean, I did as part of my graduate work and my internships. Now I work with couples, and I have for 25 years. I really like working with couples. but I never really got into the family, like the children and the stepchildren and all that stuff. I just wasn't my calling. So it's more the transpersonal psychology that attracted me in the psychotherapy, less so the family, but the marriage part was kind of really cool too. I ended up doing that for 25 years, 30 years now, but yeah.
Wow. Super cool. Super cool.
Thank you.
I love the way the dots have connected in your life, one thing to another. And you have these incredible memories that you're, you know how the path led there. And it's so um, fascinating to listen to it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
cool.
Uh, just diving into couples for a little bit. How do you think couples can build resilience together as a
Oh,
couple, as a unit?
yeah, no, I love that. All right, so I'm going to reverse because I was conceptually, let's go preconception to the body. So I'm actually going to go, let's skip the body for now. Let's go conceptually. So when I work with couples, I say to them, conceptually, I want you to go from me to we. Okay, me to we. Now, conceptually is not enough. It actually has to be ingrained in the nervous system. It has to become habits of the body and the mind. Okay, and that we'll get into that in a moment, I'm sure. But like me to we, what do you mean about? You're like, what do you mean by me? I'm sure you like. Someone might be asking, what do you mean me to we? You lose your meanness? No. What I want people to do is like, yeah, still have your sovereignty. You're a sovereign human being. You're an independent human being. You have your own thoughts, feelings, and sensations, like all your worldviews. You're not going to give that up for a we, right? But what I find when I work with couples is like they both think, like in a conflict, they both think they're right, and their job is to prove the other person wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. I'm gonna prove you wrong, and they go back and forth, tit for tat. Okay. If you can change your physiology and your nervous system to support the me to we, then you'd be going, does it really matter who's right or wrong? We can have that conversation. It could be kind of fun, but I don't have to prove shit to you. What it is like it's me and you facing the challenge, as opposed to me looking at you and saying, you're the challenge. Like,
Yeah.
if you could just fix yourself, how you think, feel, and express, everything would be better. And he or she's looking at you going the same fucking thing. If you guys can, and it does take a lot of work individually, which I'll get into, but if you guys can join together, two as one, and face the challenge together, it's me to we. You're not giving up yourself, but you're transcending the limitations of yourself to a we space. It's a whole different approach to life. It's and I'm nothing. Conflict is fine. Conflict is natural in relationships. It's how you do the conflict.
Yeah.
And if you go from me to we, you're going to have a lot less conflict because you're going to be able to solve things so much earlier on in the process before it builds up resentment and you don't like them. And even if they breathe too loud, it's annoying. How they chew their food's annoying. Like you start like, oh, I hate this person. This person's driving me fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Let's not, if we can, not get there by changing conceptually the me to we. And then part of that is like, what agreements do we have on how we solve the problems? Because most people enter relationships and a lot of how they do things is unconscious. They
Yeah.
have unconscious agreements, implicit, not explicit. And it's informed by religion, nationality, ethnicity, regional differences, family of origin. Like all these forces show up inside the relationship of like, oh, this is how we solve this problem. And then you have attachment styles. Someone might be anxious, and another person might be avoidant, and you do all that kind of engagement too, while everything else comes through you as well. So like it's like, okay, those forces are real. My hope for anyone is you can choose to allow those forces to influence you, but let's be conscious about it, and let's have agreements that are like implicit, no explicit. Like let's actually talk about how we deal with financial issues, children, elderly parents, sex, religion, like let's let the parameters and the rules on how we have those kind of conversations honestly and openly, and then revisit them every certain amount of time. Because in 5 years, I'm hoping I'm a more mature, evolved human. My partner is too. Maybe the rules that guided us, or the rules within the agreements guided us 5 years ago, no longer serve us now. Let's rethink them.
Yeah.
So like, let's be conscious about these agreements, make them me to we, But then it requires a whole bunch of inner work to make that possible, which I'll get into in a second. But does that answer a little bit your
Yeah,
question?
absolutely. And I was going
Okay.
to get into the inner work, right? Because what triggered it was like, let's revisit it every few months, years, whatever the couple decides.
Mhm.
The challenge that I see a lot of couples go through, they're like, let's do this, let's make the change. But translating that into the real world shift, that's where they just trip up and fall and they almost break their teeth each time. How do they do it better?
Okay, and that's yes. So what I'll tell people is like, let's just say we have couple A, B, and they come up with an amazing agreement on how they're going to talk to and handle sexual issues. Okay. Well, if either one of them falls back into old habits of how they've been programmed to do it, and they break the agreement, the other person, and it goes both ways, they're not going to trust you. You said you're going to be calm, cool, centered, open, have a fun dialogue, and yet you did your, you know, aggressive, assertive thing, or you
Yeah.
withdrew and hid in the other room, or you collapsed or shut down, whatever the person does. So I can't trust you. I can't trust what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why, for me, there's three pillars. The first one is the agreements, everything we just talked about, and they're awesome. You need to do them. The second one for me is the individual, and there's four things that I think need to occur within the individual so they can live into those agreements.
Yeah.
First thing is healing. What are the things inside their system that needs to be healed? You know, the wounds,
Yeah.
things that are under shadow, if you want to kind of use the Jungian terms. Because if you don't heal them or begin to heal them, they're going to come out express. They're going to express themselves sideways.
Yeah.
Now, you're going to do passive aggressive behavior. You're going to shut down. You become aggressive. Whatever you do.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. The second is learn to regulate your nervous system. So even if you become reactive in the middle of a conversation with your partner, you can do certain things to calm your system down.
Right.
And what I'll tell my men is like, nothing wrong with feeling your feelings, but you're not three. You don't have to act on them,
Yeah.
right? Like you're a man. You're not a child. You can learn to control yourself. Doesn't mean you
Yeah.
repress your feelings, but doesn't mean you have to act out on do whatever you do. So learn to regulate your nervous system so you can show up more loving, caring, compassionately, even if you're having a hard time on yourself.
Yeah.
Acknowledge that, but you don't have to express it in unhealthy ways. Regulate your nervous system. There's breath practices, there's posture, muscle
Yeah.
work you can do, there's mantras, all kinds of really cool stuff. The third one is kind of what I call evolution of consciousness. So there are 21 lines of development: cognitive, moral, emotional, psychosexual, 21 of those things. And I get a sense where each person is in particular lines of development. Evolution of consciousness is like, what's the next developmental stage for you? And how do we create the practices, the disciplines, find the tools, technologies that help you raise your consciousness in this particular line? So maybe it's about becoming more emotionally intelligent, or more complex in your thinking, or expand your moral system. You know, moral development goes from egocentric, is about me and my immediate gratification and needs, to sociocentric, is about me and my group, whatever the group might be. It could be
Yeah.
religious, it could be my football team, it could be my family, whatever the group is. World-centric, meaning I can recognize the value and dignity of all human beings, not just people within my group. And then the bodhisattva vow, if you want to kind of use the Buddhist, concept, we're all sentient beings, not just human beings. So like your circle expands more and includes more life inside of it, more
Yeah.
sentient beings. So like, maybe you're egocentric and the next thing for you is sociocentric. Maybe you're sociocentric and the next thing is world-centric. So like kind of map those things out and figure out what the next step is and help you evolve up those lines of
Right.
development. And the last one, this is a fun one, and it blows people's minds. Like, why the hell would you do this for couples? Optimizing the physical system. Like, why would that matter? Okay, so you care if I explain? It matters.
Absolutely. Go for
Okay,
it.
cool.
I'm just
So,
listening with rapt attention here.
thank you, thanks. So, like, why does it matter? I will say, if you're not eating well, you're not sleeping well, you're not moving, and it doesn't have to be hardcore fitness training, but like moving the physical body, You're not dealing with your stress. You're not dealing with living within your circadian biology, 24-hour day-night cycles, and you feel like crap. You're tired, you're worn out, you're grumpy, blah blah blah, whatever the thing is for you. It's hard to show up loving, caring, compassion with your partner.
Right.
So like, let's dial those things in. So for instance, I had a couple who did. I said, you guys should do the Whole30 diet. Are you familiar with the Whole30 diet?
No.
Dallas Hartwig and Melissa Hartwig. It's a dietary program, and all you do is for 30 days is remove gluten, grains, dairy, and sugar from your diet. So and if you're a vegan, modify it accordingly. Do what your thing is, but basically just remove as much of things that might be not, you don't have sensitivities to. So just eat grass-fed beef and pasture-raised eggs and fruits and vegetables, but not like fried.
Yeah.
And healthier oils if you're going to, when you cook things, and minimize a minimal amount of whole foods as possible for 30 days. And what will happen like towards the end of those 30 days is people are like, oh my God, my constipation's gone. My brain fog is gone. What I thought was arthritis is gone. My discomfort in my GI tract is gone. I didn't realize I felt like crap because I didn't have a compare and contrast. But now that I'm eating differently, my cognition's better. Oh, great. Your cognition's better. I'm sleeping better. I have better energy. And then after 30 days, you reintroduce one food at a time for 4 days and just see what happens to you.
Yeah.
If your brain fog comes back, your GI distress comes back, well, then at least that's in this very period of time, this particular period of time, that you might be sensitive to that food. And you might not want to include it in your diet because it's going to cause these symptoms, at least for now. Maybe a year from now it might be different for you. And you start feeling better, which is great. And then you start showing up nicely for your spouse. And that's true with not just diet, it's also fitness, it's also stress management, it's also circadian biology, it's sleep. Like I would say, I just, Kirk Parsley, he's a medical doctor, he's a sleep expert. I just interviewed him for my podcast. He's awesome. Sleep, 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 sleep. Like, if there's one thing you're going to encourage someone to do is get good sleep, good, deep sleep, REM, the latency is not too long or too short. Around 8 hours. Some people can do 7.5. Some people need 9. Kind of figure that out. But like you want deep, good, restful recovery and sleep. Cool. Because if you're not, I think it's really hard to do the interpersonal work with your spouse. If you're like, I haven't slept, forever.
Yeah.
So optimize your physical system, evolve your consciousness, regulate your nervous system, and heal your old wounds. When you start doing all those things, it's easier. It's not easy, but it's easier to actually live into your agreements.
Yeah. I remember you said there are 3 pillars. Was
Oh, yeah.
the
Good
first?
memory.
Yeah.
Yeah. First one is agreements. Second one is, the whole human individual system, healing old wounds, regulation, evolution of consciousness, and optimizing the human system. Third one is co-regulation. Co-regulation. There are practices that couples can do together to help each other regulate their nervous systems. Like one spouse comes home, he or she has been, they're crazy, it's been a really rough day, they're exhausted, they're stressed out, and the other spouse needs to step in. They don't have to, but it's kind of a nice, loving thing to do. Step in and help co-regulate with your partner so he or she can feel calmer, cooler, more relaxed, supported, loved, cared for. So there are practices that I encourage my clients to do, and I can give you one of the basic, easiest ones if you'd like. Okay. I learned this from Dr. Stuart Savatsky. He's one of my I have 2 mentors. Stuart's my second mentor. I've known him for, almost 25, 30 years. He's a scholar of Kundalini Yoga, but not the American version of bigger orgasms and last longer in bed, the real Kundalini Yoga, the rising of the energies. So Tantra, but the original meaning of it, not how we do it here in the States, because we kind of we take a lot of traditions and they can kind of silly, but that's another conversation. Okay. Nothing wrong with having longer orgasms and lasting longer in bed. That's awesome. It's not the purpose of Kundalini and Tantra. All right, so I study with them. He's written quite a few books. He's a great, really, really good guy. He taught me this one. So, and I have all my couples do this at the beginning of every session, but I encourage them to do this on a daily basis. Face each other, eye contact. With permission, you put your hand on the heart and you have eye contact. And then you start synchronizing your breath. And you literally just do that for 5 minutes.
Wow.
So it does a few different things. Hand on the heart, you can actually feel the physical heart beating. You can feel the energy of the heart. Like there's an energetic pull to it. And it's like, it's almost like it's like at the energy level, you just start getting in sync with this other person. And because they're lovingly touching you, if you're stressed out, it starts literally the heart starts relaxing and not pumping
Yeah.
as fast. And because you're synchronizing your breath relaxes. And when you breathe more fully and deeply, more oxygen goes to the brain, to the prefrontal cortex. You can take better decisions. Your amygdala is not fired up and ready to go, ready to fight. Eye contact, you look into the other person's soul, really. Like if you want to think about it metaphorically, or maybe some people take it literally. But the love of your life is literally staring at you. Like they're there with you. So
Yeah.
you're connected emotionally, mentally, spiritually, energetically. And people, it's really funny because like memories will start rising up. I've seen people cry. I've seen people laugh, like all kinds of stuff. And I'll tell them, allow whatever emerges to
Yeah.
emerge. Memories will come back up, and oh my God, I remember our first date. I remember this incident. Mostly it's loving stuff, but it doesn't always have to be. It could be like you
Yeah.
feel safe and things can emerge. But for the most part, 99% of the time, 95% of the time, both systems relax, get connected, and it's a great place then to do my work with them because they're much more
Wow.
open, they're much more relaxed, they're much more calm and ready for some deep, hard conversations. And I tell people, like, do that in the morning upon waking, maybe if that works for you. I definitely do it at night when you've been running around to your different jobs, doing the things with the kids and work and errands, come home and 5 minutes, do that and just reconnect. So
Wow.
that's one example of like a practice you can do to co-regulate.
Awesome. I have so many more questions here, but we are running out of time. So I will just switch into a very interesting game that I just came up with today, especially with your broad experience. I
Okay.
was like, let's have some fun. It's nothing crazy. I just wanted to explore what comes up for you when I mention these things. I'm going to go through different experiences of your life, and I'm going to basically, you can talk about any moment in that entire journey that stands out. When I say it, what's the first memory, whether it's beautiful, sad, upsetting, anything that comes out for you, and
Okay.
a story worth sharing. So that's all the
Okay.
game is. So
All
the
right.
first one is your journey as a master coach at SEALFIT.
That was, I was blessed. Um, Commander Mark Devine, retired Navy SEAL commander. When I was 39, my wife at the time asked me what I wanted to do for my 40th birthday. And she was expecting me to say, go to the islands, Caribbean, and, swim around and hang out and have fun. I was like, no, I want to go train with the Navy SEALs. What? And Mark at the Commander Divine, Mark at the time had a program it called the 3 week SOF Academy. Ended up being really 4 weeks, but is a pre-budge training program for young men who want to go Navy Special Warfare, who want to become SEALs, and also for other special operations groups within various other branches, Marine, MARSOC, and Army Special Forces and Air Force Combat Controls, I think it was. But people who want to get specialized training in preparation to hopefully successfully go into these career fields in the various branches. And I was like, I want to go do that. And at the end of it, they have what's called Kokoro Camp. Kokoro means indomitable spirit in Japanese. And it's modeled after Hell Week, but it's 50 hours instead of 5 days. It's 2 days instead of 5 days. I'm going to go do that. So I signed up. I lived there for a month. We trained 12, 14 hours a day. It was an amazing experience. 4 guys I trained with all became SEALs. I was 39. I was a little dude, but like all the young guys made it through and they did really well. And then they ended up making it through BUDS and becoming SEALs. a year later, Mark called me. He's like, "Hey, I want to take what you learned in that month-long program, but I want to expand it to a more civilian audience because not everyone wants to become a Navy SEAL, you know. But what you learned could be beneficial for hockey moms and hockey dads and people in law enforcement and entrepreneurs and other kind of high performers." Cool. So he brought me on, and we literally built out what's called the Unbeatable Mind Academy. Built it out. I ran it for him for a couple of years. I co-led his, well, actually I led, but co-led his mastermind group for many years. I helped him launch and run a coaching training program which still exists. I helped him put together summits where we have speakers come in from all over the globe to talk about all kinds of really cool stuff. And I did that for a decade. And it was an amazing experience because I got great training. I got to hang out with some amazing people. I love Mark. His daughter, Catherine, I spent a lot of time working with. She was awesome too. A lot of the other SEALs I got to train with and hang out with. The clients were great. They're all high performers. They're gung-ho. They really wanted to train really hard, do really cool stuff. And that's where I got my feet wet more on the hardcore resilience work. Less so in terms of like what we shared earlier, in terms of like sitting with your emotions. That's less of it. Although we did some of that work in this program, but it's more like mental toughness and emotional resilience. You intentionally put yourself in really hard, challenging situations, and you develop the capacity to handle it in a healthier, better way, more effective,
Yeah.
efficient way. And it was awesome. It was really, really cool. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks.
The next one that I have is national security and defense.
I retired in 2020 after 20 years. And I got a call from a friend of mine October 15th after the October 7th when Hamas attacked Israel. And she asked me, "What's going on?" And I had spent about 10 years, 8 years working on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I actually went to Israel. I met with Israeli intelligence and security people. I met with Palestinian Authority people. I met with a lot of people in Washington, D.C. So I spent a lot of time on the issue. And I created like 6 hours of audio for her explaining like who Hamas is, who Hezbollah is, how Iraq plays a role, what's Iran's role, going back to 1953 when you overthrew Mossadegh, what's going on in Syria with Bashar al-Assad, his regime, what's going on in Yemen. You have to understand what's going on in Lebanon. So I laid it all out. I loved it. I wasn't doing policy work, but I spent enough time that I'm not an academic. I probably made mistakes. I did my best, but I love doing that kind of stuff because I haven't. You asked kind of earlier, like, what's connecting things for all this stuff? And my connecting thing is family. The scale is just different. I can work with you as you and your wife and your kids, less so your kids, but you and your wife. But like when I do my public policy here in the United States, it's liberals, libertarians, progressives, conservatives. It's families with different perspectives. It's no different than a marriage. Like, how do you bring these people together? Because we have to live together and solve these problems. The scale is even bigger. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I mean, they're literally living next to each other. It has to be solved one way or another. I mean, it doesn't have to be. You can continue in perpetuity doing this stuff that's going on, but it'd be nice to solve these issues. So, like
Yeah.
in my mind, it's like national security defense is a piece of the whole thing around that makes no sense what we're doing. How can we get along? And not only get along, like let's be neutral, but you'll hear like and I don't want to get into like Trump and turning Gaza into like a playground for the rich and famous. Like he months and months ago, he talked about casinos or whatever he talked about there. But like those territories, some of those territories really could be like the Paris of the Mediterranean or of the Arab world. Like they could be vibrant growth centers for finance and health and play, because like Lebanon was a place where a lot of Arab wealth would go to and play, like play around. But it's like, wow, not only could we not be neutral, like it's like, well, at least we're not killing each other. Like, wow, we could actually get along
Yeah.
and create vibrant societies and really kind of evolve ourselves. So when I think about defense and national security, I do think there are real threats. I'm not living in a fancy world, and sometimes people need to be killed. And I spend a lot of time with people who do that for a living, and that's necessary. But my hope is like, okay, that is necessary. It might be necessary for the rest of future of humanity. That some people, unfortunately, are predators that need to be taken out. Cool. But can we create as many conditions as possible that you limit the supply of predators? So it's more like police dealing with predators, then you have to have whole militaries dealing with other
Yeah,
military as
I get
predators.
that.
Like how can we reduce those kind of tensions? And that's where my mind goes. So like for instance, my girlfriend asked me, "What do you think about changing the name of the Department of Defense here in the United States, Department of War?" I said, "I'm for it and I'm against it." And here's my answer. It's Orwellian to call it the Department of Defense the way we do our foreign policy, because it is really a Department of War. So let's just call it what it is. Okay. It blows things up and kills people. And that's the purpose of the military. But if you wanted to contextualize the military as an arm of U.S. foreign policy, but even make it more expansive in terms of like the globe and say it's not, it's like global defense. Imagine if like, aliens came to attack us, we'd actually have to work with the Chinese and the Russians and the Indians and all the large players, Brazilians and all this stuff, and come up with a global defense network. Like my mind goes, oh, how do we start thinking along those lines? Because some of the threats we face are global in nature. Water shortages, it's real. Like there's going to be wars over water shortages. We can argue against global climate change. People have opinions or not, but there are still food issues that are going on in the world.
Yeah,
You know, have been, continue to be, and there will be wars on those things. Energy, access to energy. Obviously, Iraq War, the Gulf, the Arab Gulf, or the Persian Gulf, depending on who wants to talk about stuff. We've been fighting with the Iranians there since the 80s. All kinds of stuff going on there. A lot of this is energy related. So some of the issues we face are global in nature. So if we want to, yes, the military should be at a high standard, should be ready to destroy and blow things up and kill people, highly trained to do so. But in my opinion, you want to contextualize it in global defense of one sort or another. Like, how do you create the conditions, as I said earlier, so you need less of the killing machines? I think you always will need killing machines. And I don't mean machines. Yes, probably in like 10 years, it'll all be Skynet killing machines, but, but military. But how do you reduce the need for it as much as possible? You solve
got
some of
it.
these global problems.
Got it.
Okay,
Awesome. Thank you.
sorry.
Thank you for sharing your
Yeah.
perspective. I know we are running close to the end now of the time. Do you think we can borrow 10 more minutes, 10 extra minutes? Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'll ask you just a couple more questions and then we can
Sure.
close out on it. Uh, Final one. I had a bunch of experiences, but this is what we'll end with this game with. Director of Human Resilience at Apeiron Zoh.
Zoe.
Zoe.
It
Yeah.
means limitless in Greek.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, oh man, it's funny you bring that up. I did an interview with Kirk Parsley, the SEAL medical doctor I referred to earlier. And I thanked him on my podcast. Why did I thank him? Because in 2020, I got a call from Dr. Micah Hamilton. Her and Dr. Daniel Stickler run Apeiron Zoh. She saw something I wrote on LinkedIn, I think it was. Saw that we had a mutual friend in Kirk, Dr. Parsley, called him. He said nice things about me because I've been on stages with him. We've spoken publicly about stuff, and he really liked me and said really nice things to her about me. She called me up. It was March 2020, COVID, it was just like in the middle of COVID. And I was hired like the next day. And she's like, I want you to, help us build some of these programs on, and I
Wow.
like Nassim Taleb's ideas on anti-fragility. So like, let's build some anti-fragility programs. So I became the director of human resilience. And the first thing I did for them with a lady named Meg, PhD Meg, she was awesome. Meg Foley, was to create an anti-fragility program where we kind of did everything. We just kind of walked through, like, how do you optimize a human's physical system? How do you optimize it you psychologically? Since then, I've added, the environment, and I've added social things as well. But like, it was like to get the call from her and her wanting to work with me and me bringing me in and just say, do this, like you figure it out. I love that. Like, hey, go create stuff. So that's my original connection to becoming Director of Human Resilience at
Wow.
Apeiron Zoh. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Where can people find you online?
Website is Michael D as in David, but just letter D, Ostrolenk, OSTROLENK .com. It has my individual work, my couples, my work with corporations, my men's group. I lead something called Team Fudoshin. It's there as well. I co-lead it, I should say. And you can also find me, unfortunately, too much on Instagram, M Ostrolenk, on Twitter, M Ostrolenk, and then I'm also on LinkedIn and Facebook, Michael David Ostrolenk. And I post daily content.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Guys, make sure to check him out. Final question. If you had to leave 3 pearls of wisdoms for couples to implement in their life today, what would you recommend?
Okay. Conceptually, go from me to we. Think about your partner as a partner against the challenge. He or she is not the challenge, although he or she might be challenging. So conceptually, that's one thing. Second thing is be really curious. Don't make assumptions. I believe in psychic powers, but pretend for the moment you can't read your partner's mind and he or she can't read your mind. So be really curious in what they're thinking and feeling and be open to whatever they share.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is work on your shit. Like work on your wounds, learn to regulate your system, evolve your consciousness, and optimize your human system so you can show up in a more loving, caring, and compassionate way inside your relationship.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. I had the opportunity to learn so much. I'm sure the audience learned a lot.
Cool.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure talking.
Thanks, AJ. Appreciate you.
Okay.